fascinating.
It is,
I don't
isn't
think
it?
that.
I
I don't
really
think that
don't think he's gonna message me at all. I think he's gone cold. But
he's gonna.
we can have a chat, I suppose, and hope that he
Yeah.
actually turns up.
Yeah.
So I'll just quickly do a quick introduction. I'd just like to say hello and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk. This episode, we will be talking about flat earthers. Here with me, I have comedian Joseph Thompson.
Hello.
I would have had at the precise moment, but unfortunately he hasn't messaged me yet. I would have had Joshua Hammer, who's the flat earther. And we have Jonathan Zook. Is that right?
Zook.
Zook. Jonathan Zook, who is a flat earth hobbyist. I'd just like to point out to the viewers that you are a flat earth hobbyist and not a flat earther yourself.
Yeah.
Perhaps you could explain what makes you a flat earth hobbyist.
Well, I just became fascinated by flat earthers when I discovered that they existed. So, and I also feel like I kind of understand where they're coming from because I'm a little bit conspiratorial minded. So I have a little compassion on them. Plus, some of them are really religious people.
I have
And
noticed that, yeah.
yeah, and there's this one direction that they come from where they're taking the Bible in a strange literal sense that, most Christians and Jews don't agree with, but they're in
Exactly.
their little bubble. And
Yeah, I heard about that. So when I kept hearing about it on these flat earthers, I purposely went and joined some religious Facebook pages and groups. And I just put a simple question out there. Do you believe the earth is flat? And pretty much every single one of them that messaged me said, no, the earth is not flat. So I don't understand where, this it's been taught in the Bible and stuff like that. How can these flat earthers come up with it and use the Bible to teach flat earth when even Christians, and I've talked to Catholics, do not believe we're on a flat earth?
I know it's crazy, but there's little sects of Christianity that are so isolated and they don't trust anybody outside of their circles. They don't trust Catholics. It's too big. It's too old. They're conspiratorial minded usually. And I ran into one. I don't know how I ran into him, but there was this pastor who made his Facebook page Fired for Truth. And I was curious why. And it was because he had preached on flat earth from his pulpit and his congregation kicked him out. So I wanted to send him a message and say, hey, I would love to talk to you about this because, I think that, if you think you're standing up for truth, that's cool, but it'd be way cooler if it was something better than flat earth.
Yeah, that's the thing. Of all the conspiracies they could pick and stuff like that, why flat earth? It seems to be every time there's a flat earth video put up, there's another 20 after it debunking it within minutes. But yet these people just do not seem to listen. It seems to be, for me, it seems to be more like a cult.
Yeah.
They're all believing one thing, I mean? It's everybody, and they've got the cheek to call us sheep. The amount of times I have been called a sheep and a globetard. Where the hell's that one come from?
Isn't it crazy?
On these Facebook page people are
it's
mental.
And I'm just curious how you're gonna get fired or pulled from the pulpit just for speaking on a topic. But that just it shows you how controversial certain topics for certain areas are, like religion, flat earth theory, so many different things. So I mean, that kind of hit me in the funny bone a little bit. The fact that he got yanked from the pulpit for kudos, my friend. That was a good one. Nice.
So one of the things that makes me want to do is just I was like, can I figure out a way to explain this more simply? Because a lot of the stuff goes over their head because they don't have a scientific worldview. And I don't really have much of one either. You guys probably don't have a super
deep. Definitely. I was saying to Joe that most of my science classes was spent talking about the next episode of X-Files and textbooks, you know what I mean? So that's as much knowledge as I've got when it comes to science, how to draw pieces on textbooks and what was going on in X-Files. Yeah. And that actually showed me age there, talking about the X-Files as it was coming out.
Yeah. Well, I was there too. I'm actually a little older than I look. I'm 38. So I was definitely an X-Files fan at one point. And when I think about all these guys that are out there making long videos, putting so much time and energy, it makes me sick sometimes because it's just ridiculous. But I do think that sometimes if you make something simple enough, because a lot of it I think comes from just not understanding the world.
Yeah.
So they haven't really thought about it. They've just been stuck in, like, maybe they're in a small town in the middle of nowhere. They never left. They might not have ever been on an airplane.
The problem with these people, they should have never discovered YouTube.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
seems to be where it all starts.
It's
YouTube.
a trap.
It is, definitely.
Usually you find a lot more closed-minded people than you do open anyway. So it seems like it's all a product of how you as a person can perceive your surroundings or your world as a collective whole. You know what I mean? So that's kind of cool to find out little different things in that area too.
See, definitely, they seem to. That's pretty much what they do, isn't it? Most of their evidence is what they've observed, and it seems to be most of the time they've observed straight lines.
Yeah.
I thought this flat Earth was supposed to be circular. You know what I mean? It's a disc. Where the hell's all these straight lines coming from? Wouldn't it make it a square or a hexagon or some sort of straight line shape?
With that being said, it doesn't carry on around as in the global theory does. So you would have an ending of some sort if that was the theory. You know what I mean?
See, I can sort of prove something, right? So with the globe, you get curvature, whatever angle you're looking at, isn't it? So imagine this now is your flat Earth, right? I'll just do that. So you tell me when you actually see a straight line. It's always curved. So no matter what angle you're taking a photo at, it's curved. So why do they keep bringing up these straight lines and claiming that all these curvature photos of the planet are fake? Why don't they just say, well, I'm sorry, but we can get curvature with both a flat Earth as well as a globe? But they don't. They like to say that it's all fake and it's NASA and government run, and we're all sheep for following NASA and governments. Jesus, governments is a completely whole different thing for me. I don't really trust them because they're personally out for themselves. A lot of them are just out for themselves, line their own pockets. So these flat earthers really think that all these governments of the world. Oh, he has messaged me. I'll get back to him in a minute. But all these governments of the world are sticking to this one big conspiracy that we're on some sort of flat Earth instead of a ball for no particular reason apart from to spend billions on trying to convince everybody we're on a globe.
Yeah.
What is the point of it all? It just doesn't seem to be any point to it at all.
Yeah.
So hang on a minute. He's just messaged me, Joshua. He says it is 4:15 my time. Do we have the right time? See, I knew he was on a slightly different time. Shall I just see if he's ready now?
Sure. Yeah, that works for me. Let's get it started.
So I was kind of enjoying the chat without him, but let's see what kind of stuff he comes up with. He's classed as a biblical flat earther, so I'm assuming he's going to try and use the Bible.
Yeah.
Let's see. I could be ready now if you need. I was planning on 5. Flat earthers. Right. I don't know. Should we just chat for another? I don't know. How long is it?
Either way is fine with me. Whatever you decide.
It don't matter to me.
I have to say to him, let me know. Let me know. Ready. Did not receive message from Skype. Tried to call me. Right. So we'll try and call him. So let's add him into the call. I've got no idea how you do that. How'd you do it, Joe?
You just I can add him.
Yeah, that's all right. That's how I did it. Where is he? So let's see. It's calling. And he's unavailable. Oh, see.
I'm sincerely I'm sincerely intrigued by the story of how people get to this point. So I actually do want to hear how people develop in that direction. Although a bunch of YouTube videos would be a little disappointing.
Oh, definitely. I can't stand these YouTube channels. I get about 30 seconds through them. It's it's just like watching a 30-year-old virgin still living in his mum's basement talking crap. It's unbelievable. So yeah, I usually last about 10 seconds and I turn them off.
Yeah.
You never really get any proper evidence, at least with Globers, you know, even though they want you to discount every single person that's ever studied science, and they definitely absolutely hate NASA. They've got an absolute grudge against them. So anything that comes from NASA automatically fake.
Yeah.
Richard Branson. I'm not sure if I got his name right then, because I referred to him as Branson Pickle. But anyway, even him, he's got nothing to do with NASA. You know what I mean? He's a billionaire. He's built his own way of letting people pay millions of pounds to go and check out the actual planet.
He almost bumped into the dome.
Oh, did he? That's another question I wanted to ask him. You know,
He just grazed it.
Right.
He was right there. He just missed it.
Just missed it. Terrible. But NASA have sent out loads of rockets and satellites and stuff like that. So what are these all doing? Sort of just floating around this dome, going back and forth, or what? You know, how do they get through the dome for a start? Let's give him another go.
Let me see if I can merge him with us. Give me one.
Right, seem to have one photo. I think we've just lost. We just lost Joe. Right. Okay. So I'd just like to quickly introduce Joshua Hammer, who is a flat earther. So we've got let's see, we've got Jonathan Zook, who is a flat earth hobbyist, and we've also got Joseph Thompson, who is a comedian. So who would like to start?
I'd like to hear Josh's story, if possible. I mean, you know, where did you start from, and where did you end up as far as your understanding of flat Earth?
Sure. Here, let me just make sure I get our background noise muted there for a sec. I'm a father of 4 boys. I got a, wife and I. We live in a beautiful little city out here just west of the Great Lake of Michigan and in the state of Wisconsin, USA. I have been a flat Earth proponent for probably about 7 years now. I started just kind of digging around. I had some it first became it was like a ridiculous thing in my mind, like, how could this be even something that people could believe in? I set out to kind of like just debunk it and disprove it. And it was around the same time that I was really digging into like my own like spirituality, my faith, and things like that. I actually was a college student studying things like physics and mathematics and astronomy, and so I was acing tests on black holes and quasars and all this stuff about outer space and all that, and so it became this weird, like, how could people even think that it's possible that the Earth could be flat, and is this just like uneducated individuals or whatever, and so I started looking into some of the concepts of it, and I guess I just couldn't disprove it after I got enough objections, and then I found enough things that I would consider to be proof. And I also am a biblical flat earther, so not every flat earth proponent out there is a Bible believer. I happen to be a Bible believer myself, and so as I like kind of grew in my faith in the Bible, it was around the same time that I started like digging into flat Earth, and then that kind of compounded together, and I didn't see any. I started seeing that there was no contradictions there. I don't know. I had asked a lot of questions, and I dug in, and it's kind of hard to do research online nowadays because it's hard to verify any real study that you do. But I found enough things where, I was pretty convinced, and I have only since then been more convinced after seeing all the different facets that are involved. I mean, it's a really complex topic.
Yeah,
and,
I'm a Christian too, but I was wondering, is there a particular brand of Christianity that you're involved with that tends towards flat Earth? Like, is it a Yahweh word sect? People that believe you have to say the word a particular way? Because I've heard some.
I haven't exposed to that. I disagree with that. I think that's like a mysticism type of, like, you think it's magic in how you say it or something. I consider myself a Nazarene, if that's a verifiable term. It's very similar to Messianic Jewish. It's halfway between Jew and Christian. I do keep Sabbath. I stand up. I wear these, tassels on my clothing and things. I don't eat pork. I don't do Christmas. I don't believe in a never-ending hell. I don't believe we go to heaven or hell when we die. I think we wake up at the end and meet our Maker. And I believe the Earth is flat. I think it's a young Earth. I think there was a global flood. Oh, did I say the word global on this? They're still trying to filter out the I'm kind of a quirky, weird guy. I got a lot of different controversial views about a lot of things, but I know we want to stay centered on that. But yeah, I believe in the New Testament Messiah. I refer to him as Yeshua instead of Jesus. I tend to believe that Yahweh, the God of creation, Father, became a man, died, and rose from the dead. But I also think he created the world that we live in, and I think that the Bible describes that. But I do not base my flat Earth opinion on the Bible. It was more that my findings about flat Earth confirmed my belief in the Bible later on. So I tend to approach my flat Earth view from a scientific and observable and repeatable process, provable standpoint, as opposed to I'm just, the Bible says so, therefore it has to be type of. It was the other way around. It was like, it has to be flat based on what I've seen. Therefore, the Bible is also true about it. And I had already had a belief in the Bible and actually thought that the Bible taught globe for quite a while until after I had found my understanding in flat Earth through the trial and error, scientific reasoning, anything like that. So,
Okay.
Jonathan, you just said you were I'll say it again. You are a Christian.
Yes.
Do you believe that the Earth's flat? Does it teach that in the Bible?
I do not believe it teaches that in the Bible. I think that there are metaphorical statements about the foundations of the Earth and the circle of the Earth that some people want to use to make it seem like it's flat, but the majority of Christians and Jews throughout all of history have been heliocentric for the most part, although there are some exceptions, especially further back. But for me, I went to seminary for 1 year. I ran into people that kind of were comfortable with the allegorical elements of the Bible and how important it is to understanding it that way. So I got a little more, I guess you could say, less conservative in my view of Scripture. Although I would say since seminary, I've gotten a little bit more conservative. But obviously, the Bible is a very large, complex book with many, many different writers. It's very difficult to digest as a whole. So I understand people that want to invest a lot of time in it, and I understand literalism because I feel like literalism is, still part of my approach to it. But I do think that this, I'm glad that he said he didn't approach it from just saying, well, that's what the Bible says, because I think that if you're in one of those groups, they'll put pressure on you to think that way. And I would be curious, Josh, how many people in your immediate circle, in your religious connections, are flat Earth?
That's a great question. I mean, and I totally appreciate where you're coming from. I was a Bible believing Christian I consider myself a Nazarene now, not technically Christian, but I was a Bible believing Christian that thought the earth was a globe, and I thought that the Bible taught globe for quite some time, several years before I came here. To answer your question, yes, I do think that there's actually quite a few people that I have met in my current faith circles, people who I agree with on some things and other things. I'd say it's about 25% of the people that share faith with me are generally share their main core beliefs with me, because there's always for however long you talk with somebody, you're always going to find something you can disagree on. I like to focus on the things that I can agree on with people. And it's still funny that I find, about 25, maybe even more percent of the people who share faith in common with me will be a flat earther. It's strange, actually, because in every other aspect of my life, it's very, very rare that I find somebody who is a flat earth proponent. And then when I go to biblical, so I celebrate, for example, the Passover feast. There's like a 7-day feast of unleavened bread and things. Actually, our friend Joe down in North Carolina, I was just saying, I used to go down to North Carolina for a group to meet with them for some of those feasts. And I don't want to take too much ramble time, but there was a storm. It was Hurricane Harvey, I think it was, and my tent got blown down, and I got invited into these people's cabin, and they had extra bunks for me and my oldest, because it was just me and him. And we got to talking, and every single person in that room was a flat earther. And they were like, no way, you're a flat earther too. And we just kept talking about like what, and it turned out that like they found about the flat earth theory, and that led them to belief in the Bible the same way that I believe. And it was kind of a really cool experience. So it's strange in the circles I'm in, and I would say Messianic Jewish circles. I don't consider myself a Messianic Jew, but we're really similar to that in our veins. We're kind of at-home Bible study groups. We don't really have a label. And there are quite a few flat earth proponents and people who have heard about it and are just kind of like on the fence because they've learned nothing but globes since the kindergarten. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, there are quite a few people that in my faith circle who do believe the flat earth aspect of things, but we also agree to disagree with people. We don't consider that a expectation on our faith or anything.
It's a non-essential, as we would say in the Presbyterian branch that I'm in.
Sure.
That's cool. Well, Al, are you still in contact with those people that you ran into in the tent?
Yeah, just slightly. They're Canadians up there, and I have a contact with just a couple of them. I had kind of falling out on a doctrinal disagreement with one of the groups. I tend to be quite a controversial person when it comes to doctrine, but I still am in touch with a handful of those, and I just met a new flat earther yesterday at a Sabbath meeting that we were at, and we're gonna jam some guitar one of these days here and talk some stuff. He wants to teach me how to make bread at home.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. I just want to quickly ask, what evidence did you come across that changed your mind that what you see as a flat earth?
See, I was going to ask the same thing.
Sorry, mate, beat you to it.
Oh, no, you're fine. Like,
you got to jump in quicker there, mate. Fair play. You can just do a podcast with these two and just let them talk. It's absolutely brilliant. So, I forgot my question now. What was my question? Yeah, I'll let you ask it, Joseph.
So, yeah, both of you. This kind of goes for both of you. You can kind of counter answer, or like whoever wants to start. But what kind of made you, kind of two parts, A, be interested in finding out about, the flat Earth or global Earth, and then what kind of carried that to a belief and or a hobby, for the both of you.
Yeah.
And whoever wants to start, y'all can kind of carry it, and me and John will interject and do what we do.
Start. I'll start. When I first found out about flat earthers, I wanted to be as open-minded as possible, and I realized that I was accepting some things on faith from people that I respected and scientists and so forth. So I decided I'm going to try and understand it for myself. So I decided, okay, is there ways for me to convince my own brain one or the other way from just observable evidence? And I also wanted to think, well, if people are throwing out all information they're getting from scientists and NASA and what they were taught growing up, but they also want to think for themselves, I kind of appreciate that. I think that we should at some point divorce ourselves from what we've been fed and come to our own understanding and conclusions as far as we can. And so one of the things I started doing is just thinking about things that I have observed, like eclipses, sunsets, different cloud formations. And I started collecting that information and trying to find the best examples that made me think one way or the other. And the most intense one was when I saw a picture of Mount Rainier with the shadow pointing up towards the clouds, with the clouds adjacent to the shadow being lit up by the sun. And at that point, I just decided I don't think the sun can do that on a flat Earth because it's too low in the sky. It's actually below the horizon. And so that was one of the biggest ones that made me feel very comfortable having my own opinion about it, totally independent of what I've been told. And so I started looking for more things like that. And I enjoy finding extremely easy or personal observations that can help a person go in the direction I think they should go, which is heliocentrism.
Sure.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of took a similar approach. Before I go forward, I got two names. I got Joe and John, and I don't have that third name here.
Jonathan.
Jonathan? Joe.
Yeah, we got.
And I'm John.
Yeah. We're
Joe?
Josh, Joe, John, and Jonathan.
Hey, I was gonna. Hey, Joe told me
Three
there was
Joes
gonna
and a
be
J.
3 J's, and I didn't know there would be 4. So
That's a lot of J's.
4 J's. It's I don't know.
Yes, I'm glad we could help with that today.
Sure. Yeah. So, but no, I totally appreciate that approach, and I like the concept of like having easy, simple things that you can just see and do for yourself, because I don't have a NASA budget to be able to go and fire a rocket and see whether it hits a dome. And one of the things that I see is there are multiple different flat Earth models out there, and a lot of the time you're looking for information and you're trying to answer questions that are kind of like unnecessary questions. For example, I get the argument all the time, like, how come the Earth is flat if all the other planets are globes? And what they're doing in that is they're missing the entire argument. The flat Earth is not a disk floating in the middle of outer space, moving around the sun. It's a snow globe. It's a terrarium, and all the stars and moon and everything is inside of that. And it's all, and Antarctica is on the outside, North Pole's in the middle, and this is clockwise is west and counterclockwise is east, and it's all enclosed inside of that. And we don't really know what's beyond that enclosed system, right? And so, but that's the model that I'm coming from. And so, but at the same time, when you find a piece of evidence, you're going to look and say, how does this apply to both models, and which model does it support? But if you're using that piece of evidence to support an alternative model, because the model of flat Earth that I just described is not the only flat Earth model that exists. There are, for example, a infinite plane flat Earth model where Earth is just a puddle with its own sun, and the flat surface that Antarctica outside of it extends out for however long we know to another puddle over there, like way on that side, and then there's another puddle over there with its own different sun, and maybe that's where aliens come from, or maybe we're just a computer generation, simulation or whatever. My point that I'm getting to is when you look at a piece of evidence, even as simple as that might seem, if you're applying that piece of evidence to your model as a heliocentrist in order to try and disprove that it doesn't work in the flat Earth model, I've seen pieces of evidence that fit both models just fine. And I don't want to take up too much time on this topic, but there are some really simple, to get back to the original question, there are some really simple things that I like to point to that convinced me, right? So there's topics where, like, okay, explain this, and then I draw a line on a globe map, and then I draw the same line on a flat Earth map, and it works for both, right? Well, there's certain things that I found that didn't work for both for me, and the biggest one really is just we can see stuff from so far away that it should be impossible to see it from that far. I live near Lake Michigan, and one of the things that I've noticed is you can there's individuals who have been able to take photographs of the Chicago skyline from the other side of Lake Michigan. And there's even an individual who went on a boat and like stayed fixed on it and rowed their boat all the way through to show that it was not a they called it some kind of mirage.
Are you close to St. Joseph's?
They were trying to prove it wasn't a superior mirage seeing Chicago from across Lake Michigan. And you can see the entire skyline except for just that little bottom of the buildings that is obscured by the humidity in the atmosphere. And yet, according to the curvature, you shouldn't be able to see any of the buildings at all. And that's actually a close thing, like compared to what we can see. There's lighthouses that can be seen from so far away that even if you use the obscure 8-inch per mile squared thing that isn't even the real mathematics of how the curvature works, and you're not including atmospheric lensing, which curves light downward and around, these objects and lighthouses should still be miles behind the horizon and below it, and we can still see them. And so these visible, observable things, another one that I really like is the sunset over an ocean. When the sun goes down and you can see that reflection of the sun coming from the horizon all the way towards you, it's a really cool thing that can only occur on a flat surface. And so some of these perfectly mirrored flat things, and then when you just start digging in, everything else has an explanation. All these other arguments have explanations too, and I'd love to get into some.
Can I just stop you there? I believe Joseph wants to jump in.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So, like, ultimately getting back to the means of the original question. So, like, what intrigued you, for lack of, for a short story, would be it's just like a never-ending rabbit hole, like the rabbit hole effect, right? Find out this little bit of intriguing information, and then you just keep jabbing at it and just digging at it just to see how many branches of components or just how many components in general you may or may not have with this rabbit hole theory. So I guess in a way that could be intriguing from my aspect anyway, but that pretty much tells me that's how you got into it collectively as a whole so many years ago. So
you mentioned the models. Can I just quickly ask? Sorry to jump in there, Joseph. I just want to ask you before I completely forget. Why do flat earthers need so many models when the globe Earth only needs one and it explains everything? Why do flat earthers need all these individual things that don't actually connect together to explain individual things? The models just don't seem to work to me. They don't make any sense.
Sure. I'd like to comment on that really quick because here's the thing. I would disagree with the fact that the globe model explains everything, because the globe model doesn't explain how it's possible, for example, just one example that I brought up, to see things from so far away.
That's been talked about a lot on the internet. I wish I would try to get him on as well. He's called Professor Dave, and he knows so much about it from the science point of view. He could explain it, and he has explained it. I'll even put a link to his videos in the comments below, in the description, so you can check them out. And I do recommend all flat earthers check him out, because he speaks perfect sense, and he shows you it from a science point of view, and he does it with a lot of sense of humor as well, because I do personally believe that flat earthers have personally pissed him off. So he's doing these videos now.
Well, he's good at doing that, and I want to answer your question, though, because essentially you're saying, why are there different models in that?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And, I do have to say, globe has different models, too. We've got string theory, we've got black matter, we've got, gravity and electromagnetism, which are kind of, working the same. And, and all.
They're different things altogether. With the flat earth model can't even explain the seasons and the days together.
I could do that for you if you like. So if we want to make claims, we have to make claims that are on the same, they have to be equal rulings and judgments under the conversation, because I would say that the reason there's so many different theories about flat earthers is because that concept of wanting to know and get these answers is appealing to so many different types of people. And so some people bring in this flat earth concept and they're like, oh my gosh, that totally supports my alternate universe reality theory.
Yeah, but the thing is, what I've noticed about flat earthers, and I'm not saying you personally, but the ones I've spoken to on Facebook don't want to do their own investigations. They don't want to test it out for themselves. They're just going on YouTube, watching their videos, and then spouting off exactly what that YouTube has just told them.
I totally agree. And that actually is why I speak up so much as a flat earther myself, because I don't feel like most flat earthers do the necessary investigation to be able to defend what they believe. They just take what they see and they take it off a meme. And they're like, oh, that meme clicked in my head. Oh, that has to be proof. And yet I do believe that some of the globe proponents will do the same thing. For example, you just said and brought up that we don't have any explanation for the seasons. Well, I do have an explanation for the seasons on a flat earth model, and it's not very hard to do, actually. The sun makes a larger circuit.
So why don't, I've seen a lot of the videos and the models, and none of them show it. Until actually today, and I don't know where it came from, it was just a random thing that was popped up on Facebook, is now they've come up with another model that, you had the sun and the moon and they were rotating at the same time, but now they sort of somehow speed up and they sort of move a bit closer together, and that somehow explains eclipses and stuff like that. Really, I should have bookmarked it to show you. But this seems to have come out of nowhere. This is the first I'm actually seeing of this, and that's only because I'm pretty sure Globers keep asking them explain the seasons in one, the days and the seasons in one model, and now they've eventually pulled their finger out their arse and tried to do it, but it still doesn't make any sense. Yeah, and there's a lot of different explanations for it, and some of them aren't going to make any sense, and some of them are. It's such because when the globe model came about like 500 years ago, where all science came around it, you had a centralized unit of people who were all focusing on how do we explain it according to this model. Now, with the flat earth, it's this new flat earth movement that we're seeing. There's no real centralized agency. We don't have a NASA, you know what I mean? That just tells us this is what we found about how it actually works. And so many of the people who see just like the basic, simple, like, well, that's too far away to be seen on a globe, and that makes sense, and whatever. And they see like one little simple fact that's like, all right, that's good enough proof for me, and I believe in the Bible, and this seems this way for me, whatever. They find their reasons to believe in it. They don't actually and I don't even claim to have the ability to explain all of the exact mathematics and reasons and sciences behind it,
And so it's very difficult to find a consensus among flat earthers. And that's why I point to the idea that there are different flat earth theorists out there. And I don't claim to be able to explain everything about it, but I do have some basic, simple things that I say. It has to be a flat surface. Okay, not perfectly flat. Of course, there's natural motion of the water and the land and the mountains. I do think that north is in the middle. Like I said, the model. I think there's a dome and things like that. And I think the seasons are caused simply by the sun's rotation goes further away from the magnetic center and then falls back closer to the magnetic center and then rotates and then comes further away and further forward. And I don't understand the moon. What the hell is the moon, man? I don't even know. I can't explain that, but there's some cool concepts that get into it. And I don't have to explain all of it in order to, like, I don't have to.
Can I
how
interject?
A star explodes inside of itself with
Can we just hold you a minute? Jonathan just wants to quickly jump in.
I want to ask you two questions. Two questions
Yeah.
about something you brought up. You know what's crazy? I was looking at those Chicago pictures yesterday from St. Joseph's. Do you know where St. Joseph's is on the Michigan Lake Michigan?
On the east side of Lake Michigan, east shoreline in Michigan.
Yeah, I was actually looking at some of those photos yesterday because I thought they were good globe proofs. But I think that here's one of the major flaws of reasoning that flat earthers do. They think that because there's a drop that should conceal something, but when you look downhill, that doesn't conceal anything. It's not the drop that conceals things; it's the bulge. It's the bulge.
I agree.
Right. So the problem is they'll say, oh, the eight inches per square per mile, but they don't realize that you're looking downhill. Right.
But it's not downhill. It's around a curve. It's around a bulge. You just contradicted yourself. You said it's not downhill. It's around a curve. And at some point, here's another thing. Mariners, this is what proof that was really cool for me, is that ancient mariners and you can go to libraries and things and scripts of people, and there's mariners who claim to be able, and I would love to get somebody on one of these from the southern hemisphere, so to speak, hemisphere if I can use the word, who can tell us whether or not it's possible to see the North Star from down there. Because I've heard, I've read several different accounts of mariners claiming it's possible to see the North Star from below the equator. And if it's possible to do that, you have to look up through the ball in order to see that. And so, and I say, oh, that's on a tilt. And it's like, oh, but it's on a tilt at 66.6 degrees. And the tilt is based on where the North Star is. And it rotates around that axis, and the North Star is on the axis, and the equator's here along with the tilt. And the wobble is apparently pointing always exactly at the North Star. And yet we can still see that North Star apparently from below the equator. And that's one of those things that's like, well, if that's the case, how do you verify that fact? So then you get to the point where it's like, I've had arguments, I'd say debates with people where I get to the end and I say, well, if your facts are right, then it's flat. But if my facts are right, then it's a globe. So you see what I'm saying? It becomes very difficult to verify some of these facts.
So if we had a guy on from Australia and he said he's never seen Polaris, then how would you feel?
I would say Australia is a little too far south.
Too south.
Right. I thought on a flat Earth that wouldn't matter.
You're not counting atmospheric lensing.
Lensing of what? Of everything?
So let me ask you this.
That's how sunsets occur. That's how sunsets occur.
So if the sun is around a dome, right, and that is supposed to explain the seasons, if it's spinning, the sun is spinning, it keeps the outside hot, which keeps the inside cold, which means, per physics, that your outer part of said Earth, whether it's a globe or whether it's flat, is going to strictly heat the outside. So that doesn't, for me,
I'm not following your question. I mean, if you have a terrarium, like right here, I have I'll break the rule and pick up my phone. I have a little like terrarium here with a water dragon lizard, and up there is going to be a little heat lamp, and it's going to heat all of it. But if this was going to be a flat Earth model, like the same exact size. We were talking about something that's so wide and so vast, and there's humidity and water droplets in that atmosphere. And so as that sun goes way down range, it goes so far down range that it doesn't just do what my hand is doing to the camera right now. There's water and atmosphere in between my hand, which is representing the sun, and as it goes away, that it actually magnifies the sun, so it appears to do this as it goes away from you, but it also appears to do this. And so, and you can actually do this experiment, and Rob Skiba did this experiment. There's a really cool thing, and you can take a little magnifying glass type of thing and put it on a table, a kitchen table, and take a little miniature marble, like the size of a sun, and move it away from you on the table. And what will happen is you look through that lens, which is atmospheric lensing isn't something that flat earthers came up with. That's a globe model thing, right? When you move that marble away, the marble stays the same exact size and just goes down below the line of sight, below the horizon inside of the lens.
If it's on the table.
It's a simple explanation as to how it fits inside of the model, and it still heats up locally, which also explains the season.
So we all know how a magnifying glass works. When you point it at the sun, it creates a beam of light. So
I'm not talking about that.
Covered over a dome. Wouldn't this dome then shoot out laser beams from the dome and burn whoever's stuck us on their big massive table, who we are now, being watched by this person? Is that what you're sort of?
No, I'm saying that the entire atmosphere is a big lens of water all around us. And so that also explains why star trails tend to look like they're going in a counterclockwise direction in the southern hemisphere. It explains why sunsets appear and the moon appears to stay the same size as it goes away from you, but also, out of sight. There's things that it explains when you use that atmosphere.
Isn't the moon and the sun inside this dome?
Yes.
I'll get my board out.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you can see that, right? So you got a dome over here. You've got the sun. You got the moon, and they're rotating that way. So why does the sun set? Why does it go down? Why it wouldn't work on a disc? You just see it just get further and further away. It wouldn't go down. It would just
but you're not you're
small,
just missing
and then come back big.
Because actually, if you have that piece of paper, that disc, and that ball is going this way, you would think without an atmosphere that acts as a lens, the air that you're breathing has water and humidity in it, right? All the way from you, and on a foggy day. So don't ever tell me you should be able to see across an ocean, because on a foggy day you can't even see across a bridge, right? But that water on a regular day, it's clear droplets, that humidity in the air acts like, and I've seen videos from like the top of Mount Everest, and go try and look it up, a sunset over Mount Everest. You can't find it because they don't show you a real uncut video of it. The sun goes like this. It goes woo, and it looks like it gets smaller and smaller as it goes away, and then finally it falls way behind the horizon. Well, that's because you're so high up that you don't have enough humidity to cause an atmospheric lensing effect. But when you're down at the level of the sea level, or where we're breathing right now, and there's this much water in the atmosphere, and you look between us and the hundreds of miles between us and the sun, that sun, as it moves away, is in between you and that sun is a lens. And so that lens can be mimicked by what you can do as an experiment, where you put a lens here and you put a little ball here, and you move that ball directly away from the lens. And when you look through the lens, the ball doesn't look like it goes straight away and gets smaller as you just described. The ball looks like it stays the same exact size and goes down. It exactly mimics a sunset that we see when you use a lens, and you can do it on a kitchen table.
But it's on the table. There's no part of your model where the sun would ever be parallel or connected visual with the table.
What do you perceive? Because on the table, when you look through the lens and you move it away from you, it goes down so that you can no longer see it.
Because
it moves below your perceivable line of sight.
But it doesn't get cut in half. It doesn't get cut in half.
It does.
No, it doesn't get cut in half. It gets smaller.
No. When you look through a lens, it doesn't get smaller.
I've seen it. It gets smaller and shrinks.
That's without a lens. So what you're and this is, I guess it'd be a cool thing to like come back and actually do this experiment live, where you put a plate and you put a lens and then you put a little ball. What you're saying happens is it goes like this, right? Without a lens, it would do that. But if you put a lens that mimics our atmosphere in front of it, it will do this. According to what you see, it will stay the same size behind the lens, and it will go down below your line of sight, and it will disappear from you. You can even see this if you lay a little video camera on a flat surface and you just videotape someone on a hot day walking away from you. They'll start disappearing feet first, and as they walk, they won't look like they're getting smaller. They'll just look like they're doing this. And that's the way atmospheric lensing works, even on the globe model. And the other thing is, I've heard people use atmospheric lensing to try and say that's why we can see things from so far away, which is what I think you were referring to with this professor who uses science to say you can see things from too far away, and they're allowed to see around the curvature. You're not allowed to see around curvature if it's a solid object.
He doesn't talk about seeing around curvatures. He just explains how, you can see things from a certain distance. I'm not scientific, you know what I mean? I didn't really like my science classes at all. So I've already described why and what I used to do. But so yeah, scientifically wise, I don't know, you know what I mean? Which is why I wish Professor Dave would have at least come on, and we would have had a scientific point of view as well. At the moment, I don't think any of us have got any scientific qualifications. Have we? Has anyone?
Not qualifications.
Really.
No. So there you go. So
I can spell science, so I'm out of the loop already.
I will say I aced
spell
my
science,
astronomy
I'm already
exam.
out of the loop.
what was that? You aced your science.
Yeah, his astronomy exam.
What's astronomy? No, I'm just kidding.
My physics exams in college, I did sophomore year.
Yeah,
but that's about the extent of my qualifications. But
So, to go back to
I
me,
don't want to rabbit trail onto this one topic. I would really, and I talked to Joe about this too, that I'd really like to talk about the broader explanation, because as you can see with this topic that we picked about sunsets and seasons and things, where we kind of dug into that, it can get really easy to get down to where, well, I need to see the science and the math and how that, I want to see that experiment. But I want to leave that to the audience to do that for themselves. Go do the experiment. Go do a magnifying glass and watch that thing.
Yeah, but the thing is, to do these experiments, they first need to understand what exactly they're doing with these experiments and what is causing these experiments. There's no point just randomly just going out there doing a test, but you don't understand it whatsoever. What is the point of that? They've got to learn.
I want to give people a big understanding of all the different aspects that go into this. And then people can study it from whatever angle they want to and come up with their own opinions. I appreciate people and they
become globers. There's loads of people that have done evidence and their own experiments and studied for many, many years to become experts in their fields. But yet flat earthers just want us to throw all their information away, basically piss on everything they've just done and listen to them and listen to a 40-year-old virgin on YouTube. And I wasn't referring to you. There's quite a few flat earthers that I don't particularly like. I was sick to death of being called a globe-tard, a brainwashed sheep. These people really can piss you off. And I'd like to thank you for a start, because you are the most politest and nicest flat earther I've actually ever spoken to. So it's an absolute pleasure to talk to you.
I apologize.
Say that again.
I said I feel like I've been a little rude and talking too much.
No, I personally feel as if I've sort of attacked you with a couple of questions, but it's I'm not going to hold anything against you. Hopefully you'll never hold anything against me, and we'll come back and we'll have other chats, and hopefully perhaps Professor Dave might come along and get a bit of a science point of view. We can have your point of view. We can also have Jonathan's point of view. Joseph, we'll just get a load of point of views and let the viewers decide what they want.
Can I make one more comment?
Of course you can.
This is one of my theories. Josh might not like this, but I think that there are 3-letter agencies that are promoting flat Earth to get people off the scent of real conspiracies. And part of the reason why there's so many persuasive videos is because there's people that are very good persuaders that are being given funding and encouragement to make these videos. The fact is that when people combine all conspiracies together, the one that makes it the most distasteful seems to be flat Earth, in my opinion. Now,
it also makes it the most interesting. Touches most of them, because if you talk about flat Earth, you're going to start talking about, why'd you bring up conspiracies? I thought this was about flat Earth, man.
well, most people think it's a
It
conspiracy.
touches all of them. It touches all. No, I agree with you totally, absolutely.
Well, it has to be a conspiracy.
Oh, sorry, I keep interrupting there, mate.
No,
Go on,
go
now,
ahead, John,
just
I'm
answer the
sorry.
question.
Well, I was just saying it has to be conspiracy because of NASA. We have so much information.
Well, that was coming up to my next question. What do you think about NASA? What's your personal feelings about NASA?
There's too much money involved in that for me to answer safely. I'm just telling you. I mean, look, here's the thing, and I don't want to answer this from a convoluted place. I want to really get a good answer, simple and straightforward, okay? But you know how we're talking about true models, right? True flat Earth model, right? Well, okay. I think all of the weird models of flat Earth are all trying to find, they're just on their way trying to find what is the true flat Earth model, which I believe is actually the world we live in, right? Same with the globe model. There's all these different theories about, you know, gravity, and then there was, like I said, string theory and all these things, and they're trying to get to the world we live in, right? Well, I think that NASA and some of these things, in order to really understand it, you have to argue it from the right angle, where I don't want to argue the rules of a video game. And what I mean by that is, for example, I will go back to what I said. If the Earth is flat, it's not a disk floating around as the third planet from the sun inside of the heliocentric model. It's a completely different world. It's a completely different model that has gravity isn't real. There's no such thing as outer space in the flat Earth model that I propose, right? Well, with NASA, if the Earth is a globe, then cool, buy me a NASA t-shirt, right? If not, then what are they doing with all that money? And why is it that they are providing CGI images? I mean, you can go and look up actual official NASA globe pictures from outer space, and they're different from year to year. Now they'll say, oh, it's just a seasonal thing, it's just this, but the continents are different sizes. North America in one year is this big, and then you look at the model that they give us that's another official photo, and now North America is getting bigger. I mean, maybe
Hey, just a little comment. I actually live 40 minutes from NASA, and my dad worked for them, and my pastor. So
Sure.
my dad worked in the wind tunnels, and my pastor worked as a model creator for the wind tunnels.
Sure. Well, but they didn't have to talk to the boss to know exactly what. Right. So, I mean, you don't have to deceive every employee at NASA in order to, I mean, you only have to have.
Yeah, but isn't it difficult to keep all these people quiet? You know, they're all working in the same place. Won't one of them accidentally discover something, then go off and talk? Or do they just disappear?
Talk about how many people might have died, because I don't know how many people or how many people get paid off or whatever. I mean, it's really, see what I see. You could go into this NASA thing and you could go rabbit trail down this. So I don't want a rabbit trail, but it's really easy explanation. It's like, it goes to the same question. Why would they hide the globe? And if it is, then all these different countries would have to be involved. Well, then how come they're all signed on to the longest human treaty in existence and refusing to let normal citizens go out into Antarctica?
They do tours there.
Oh, I knew you would say that, but you can only go on supervised expeditions and only so
well, of
far.
course, because it's just ice. And
my childhood friend went to Antarctica many times.
You don't go there on your own. It's like, oh, I'm going to go and climb Everest, but I won't take any oxygen. I won't take any Sherpas. I won't take anyone. I'll go up there in my shorts. Fucking stupid.
I'll leave it on this topic. I'll leave it at this. Look at Admiral Byrd. Admiral Byrd went out into Antarctica and investigated it. He went there twice. And then he said in an interview on live TV that there's all this kind of land bigger than North America beyond the South Pole. And it is full of innumerable resources, gold, silver, coal, oil, all these things, platinum and all this. And it is bigger than North America. And you're telling me that no private company is allowed to go out there and mine that shit? Here's my
The
friend.
thing is, right, they've got all this gold, they've got all this oil, all in Antarctica. Why the hell are countries fighting each other for the little bit of oil and invading their countries? That's what the Gulf War was about.
Shut down the
They don't need to do that. They can just go to Antarctica, build an oil rig. You don't see any of that.
It's all about control. These people are people that have. I mean, I saw a thing online the other day. There was one of these billionaires that if he gave $1 billion to every citizen of America, he'd still have 170 billion left. These people have more money and resources than they know what to do with. They don't care about money.
So how many? Right, just a rough guess. How many flat earthers do you think there is on this planet? Whether it's flat or globe, how many? Billions, millions?
I have no idea. I mean, it's small enough number that it's easy enough to.
Right. So roughly, I think it was about 2 million. So you only need 2 million flat earthers, all put £1 or $1, whatever your currency is, and give it to Branston and send a flat earther up there to finally take a picture to say, look, we live on a flat earth. Because he's actually giving away 2 tickets apparently, which I've heard.
I mean,
so
sure.
Get a flat earther on there, get them up there with their little cameras, and they can finally see for themselves that we actually do live on a globe.
Do that. There's people who do that.
My next question.
Sorry, Joseph was just going to jump in there.
Oh no, that was just going to be my next question. To be exact,
See, you're too slow, man. You need to jump in quicker with these questions.
Yeah, no, like as far as
see, I'll just sit here and I'll just draw penises while you can do your. Well, you can do a question. Go on, then. You ask a question, Joseph.
Oh no, I was going to say because NASA, we touched on that and we touched on it being a flat Earth, but you don't explain how they show us film from the International Space Station.
Nicer.
See, another one that did exactly the same thing in their science classes.
Yeah. The curvature. I have to go into the curvature. How do you explain
I prefer curvature on my woman.
Wait, what?
I said I prefer curvature on my woman.
Right.
I've heard all these. Go ahead and ask your question, Joe. But I wanted to tell you, I've actually heard every single one of these questions before, and I've asked all of them myself and ran down the rabbit trail of the answers to them. And there are answers to these questions. I just hope we have enough time to at least open the lid and give you a peek under the.
We can keep talking until everybody goes, right, that's it now. I've had enough. I'm going.
Yep.
That's a great pen, by the way.
Oh, cheers. Yeah, they're brilliant writers. They sort of go with all my notes that I've got dotted absolutely everywhere at the moment.
Josh's pen's even better, though. Look at Josh has got that tool. That's my favorite pen.
Go on, Josh. Let's have a look at your pencil. Your pen.
That's a good pen.
My dad, and he helped me out when he gave me this pen. Yeah, stick to family. I will divert a little bit. I really appreciate everybody here doing so much to make it a fun, relational type of let's just appreciate humans and people for who we are. There's so many different beliefs out there. And what I like about Flat Earth, it's separate from the Bible. It's separate from religion in a sense, just like Gold Model is, where it's something that we want to have we're all looking for a tangible explanation of not just necessarily why we're here. That's when you get into all this religious stuff, but more, what is this place? What is it that we're on, that we're living in? And I like that reality of hey, let's just, talk about it and be appreciating the people and their different views and the different intellects and ideas that have come into it, and respect the fact that not everybody's necessarily been exposed to all the same information and that, so good.
I have a question. I was thinking of a more emotional question. Do you feel sad that you don't get to enjoy sci-fi anymore?
Oh, I love Star Wars, man. Hey, Hey, it's all fourth wall stuff. It didn't break the fourth wall for me. It's all still fiction. I mean, you ever hear War of the Worlds?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's an American phenomenon. There were people who really thought that we were being invaded by aliens.
Yeah, but that was the 1950s, and they'd missed the
Well,
beginning
now people
part of that
probably think
recording
that
where
we
it
live
said
in
this is a
gold
play.
mine. You know,
But yeah,
people
it was a
on a
brilliant,
ball.
it was a brilliant hoax. It wasn't meant to be a hoax, but it was brilliant because it did make people think we were getting invaded by aliens. So, as a flat earther, do aliens exist?
Oh, that's a good question. So I'm going to answer this in two ways. First of all, my opinion, and then secondly, the overall opinion. I mean, overall, I think I actually touched on it earlier, where there are some different theories. I mean, some people think we live in a computer simulation.
Yeah,
Or
I've heard that one, and he rattled me. He started really having a go at me because I'd also had me COVID jab. I've had both of them. I'm perfectly fine. I haven't dropped dead. I'm not being tracked. If I am being tracked, I'm being tracked by my mobile phone, which everybody has one and everybody carries around. So what is the point of sticking a tracking device in a vaccine that has just cost every government millions, if not billions of pounds to inject everybody with, when they all carry around their own tracking device?
I have an answer for that.
Oh, go on then. Yeah, go on.
out there,
Uh,
man.
It's nanotechnology. It's called graphene oxide. And once it's in your body, they can track your biometrics and feed data to the AI machines so they can create better robots for replacing humans. And it's more safe to decrease the population of the world.
Yeah, but doesn't
So
that mess up the
we can
government?
plug
Because who are they
in.
going to tax? Robots aren't going to be taxed.
Well, that's a good question, but hey,
It
the
is.
Georgia
Government are out for
Guidestones.
money. That's it. Government just like money. That's it. That's all they are interested in. They don't care about you. They don't care about me. They don't care about the country. They care about lining their own pockets. That's what
Well,
I've
I
come.
think some of them have a more
Okay, government, I
transhumanist view of the
think
world.
Yeah.
Transhumanism is a very popular idea, and they want humans to transcend their current low state. And it's not just about money; it's about improving the human experience and their concept of it.
just
So,
about getting them off the dole, really, getting them off the social.
Question. You were you gonna say something there, Joe?
Oh, I
Which
was,
Joe? We've got 3 Joes. You're going to have to pick one.
Oh, the Joe I met first.
Say again.
yeah, that's me. I didn't have another question. I just unfortunately, me being the co-host, I do have to part ways. But it's been an excellent show with both you, Jonathan, and you, Joshua. I appreciate you both answering the questions and just kind of friendly debating, kind of throwing enough information through there for the people to make their own intelligent, scientific.
And don't make any decisions. Don't make any decisions that you aren't certain of, and just
Yep.
be open-minded. And I meet so many people who are like, I can see it both ways. I can respect that opinion. There's a lot. I mean, maybe we, say goodbye to you there, Joe, or if you have to go and get back to a couple other topics and wrap up some of these rabbit trails and get to a central conclusion or something. We'll see where that goes. I appreciate meeting you as well. That was
thanks,
cool.
Joe.
All right,
Awesome.
cheers, mate.
Have a
Jonathan?
good one. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Right. Well, let's give it a couple of minutes, and I'll let you two debate between yourselves. What would you like to say to each other?
Well, I would like to go back to a couple things where we kind of had a disagreement, but it was a little bit unclear where we ended up. So when I was talking about looking downhill and how the bulge is the thing that actually conceals the things in the distance, what was your point about that? Because you believe that on a heliocentric model, the bulge is actually what would obscure your vision of something. So because for the first few miles, depending on where you're looking from, it's going uphill on the bulge and then downhill. So it's not going to be the full extent of the
It's not
drop.
uphill unless you were leaning forward. It would be going exactly parallel to your line of sight. I mean, I guess if you're considering the height of the human, but then you
have to. You have to consider the height.
Elevation. You also have to consider that. I mean, why don't I wrap up a really quick one, because they asked about aliens or whatever. Aliens, I think, it's a conspiracy all over. It's all confusion. It's all a distraction from what a real conversation we're trying to have about this curvature issue, right? I mean, some people think aliens come from the other pond on the infinite plane that we live on. Some think that they're an alternate dimension. I happen to think that aliens, in my personal opinion, in my flat earth enclosed model biblical system, aliens are just demons pretending to be aliens in order to create another layer of retrospection and confusion, and that's what I think of it. But back to the curvature thing, really I do, it's you look downhill and around that ball, around that curve, and eventually it drops far enough away where you can't, I mean, I can do it in my hand right here where, I can't see my fingernails anymore, right? So, I wouldn't say it's the 8 inches per mile squared, because that creates a parabola and not a sphere. But there, even within the sphere model, there are things that can be seen from so far away that it's impossible.
But the problem is that it's far away, but it's always a predictable obscuring of the object. So it might be further than you would expect for two reasons. One, the globe is so large. Second, that the 8 inches per mile squared is not just what will be obscured, it's the curve, and the only thing that's going to obscure it as it decreases in height is the bulge, not the actual drop.
Well, but the idea that I think you're thinking about this a little bit wrong when it comes to the bulge and the drop, because it's not a bulge or a drop, it's a curve. And so,
right, the curve creates a bulge.
Well, right, but you're on the top. No matter where you are, and all right, time out for a second, because this gets back to arguing models, okay? Because if it is flat, then none of this conversation matters. But for the sake of debate, if it is a curve, then this does matter. And if there is a curve, then there's going to become a point at which it should be impossible to see certain things. Now,
and that's what we see. And it is true.
Sure, but I would say that the majority of the reason why we do not see things has absolutely nothing to do with curvature and everything. Well, and it would be the curvature not of the Earth, but of the light through the lens of the atmosphere that creates a downward curve. The same reason why the sunset goes. Now, the higher the item is, like an airplane, you're going to be able to see that farther and farther away around. But it's like you learned in art class. It's perspective down to the last point, and you don't see airplanes going down and around behind the curvature.
So let me ask you this: if you're at 1,000 feet and you had binoculars and you were looking to the horizon, and then you raised another 1,000 feet, would you see further on a flat Earth?
Yes.
Why?
Because you're getting outside of the atmospheric lensing of the lower level of the atmosphere, which has more humidity in it. So I've seen, for example, airplane footage, infrared airplane footage that can see the Great Lakes from down in Texas.
So you think the horizon is just the end of our ability to see? It's because of the atmosphere, it's not a physical place where it drops off.
Yes.
But then it should be different all the time, right?
It is different all the time. And think about this, because if you go out on a really hot day and find the flattest surface you can on a hot blacktop and go put your eyeball down and watch somebody walk away from you, there will be a horizon that is only, a quarter mile away from you. And that person, like I said, they won't really appear to, they will appear to disappear feet first. But if you look your face up from that, you will bring them back into view. Also, for example, the curvature aspect, there's another thing that goes into curvature, which is not just how far we can see, but also reflection. Because a sunset that reflects off of the ocean, if there was any curvature to that ocean at all, it would not be a perfect mirror reflection. We look at the salt flaps in, what did I write it down, I think? There's salt flats out there in some freaking country, I don't know. And it's a perfect mirror, and everything, there is no bend, and it goes for miles through salt flats, but there's no bend. And even though there should be a bend in a distorted image, it's not there. And on a sunset over a really vast ocean, when the sun goes down, that reflection of the light on the water isn't bounced, like if it hits the curve, it doesn't bounce up and away from your line of sight. It acts as if it's a flat, always reflecting from the horizon. So we see this V-shaped sunset from the horizon all the way down to us. And that light reflects, that reflection of the light off the water could only occur that way if it was flat all the way to the horizon, which is the last area of sight you can see before it disappears into the vanishing point and the mirage, which the flat earth is really, really big too. It's not, I mean, the globe model is so big you can't see the curve. Well, at what point can you see the curve? Because another example is as you elevate higher and higher and higher and higher and higher, you should be able to eventually start noticing, especially if you use like balloons that can try and stay really stable and whatnot, you should notice that the atmosphere isn't perfectly parallel to your eyesight anymore. Or not the atmosphere, I'm sorry, the horizon shouldn't be it should start to fall below you, and eventually you should be able to see that curve below you, just like going up and out in outer space. And all these, and we were talking about, you know, hey, let's get all these flat earthers to go do their own personal footage. Well, anybody who buys these high altitude balloons and puts a camera on it, you know, they go up to these elevations that are so high, and the horizon is still eye level, not below eye level. It's still perfectly eye level and perfectly flat, and yet they go to elevations that are so high that NASA claims to have shown us pictures from those elevations that show curvature, and the only time they arrive is when there's a fisheye lens or a computer animation.
But when you go up that high, you geographically can see that the point on the Earth that is visible as you go further up gets further away rather than getting closer because of, now you said it was because of this the atmosphere, but once you're that high, you're at such a steep angle. I mean, it's black outer space pretty much right at that edge, right? But if
it's during the daytime, you're going to see light, and you go up and up and up, and you still won't be able to see stars because it's so vast. It's like looking through a cloud at that point.
Yes.
And even looking down from that height, so I've said something, well, go high enough and just take a big downward picture of the whole flat Earth model, like that little equidistant map you guys use, which I kind of disagree with that as being valid, but it's really close. That you still can't get that high because eventually you hit the dome, and that's not.
Yeah, but you're missing my point. My point is that you can geographically see that there's a certain spot on the Earth where you can actually pick out a geographical location and see that as you go up, a new, further out geographical location from that point becomes visible because you're seeing further around the curve.
I would say because you're just seeing further, you know, through the atmosphere.
Yeah, but you're further away. You're moving back from it.
It works just fine on a flat Earth model as well, because if you're inside of this little cloud, as you go up, it's essentially as if the cloud gets thinner and you can see through it, which opens up your field of vision even further, and it gets so this is one of those things where if you really go down to brass tacks, it works in both models. And so that is why
wouldn't it be more like a gray area outside there instead of just stark line?
There is a gray area. When you go up and you watch those videos of the Mexican, you see where the horizon is. It's not this stark line like you would expect. And like
if you get high enough, it's very stark.
It depends on how far away you are. And yes, you can see, but there's still this gray, like fuzzy horizon. And it's like, you know, and so, I mean, we don't have pictures in front of us of it right now. But the higher you go, the further you should be able to see on a flat Earth model as well. So
okay. Let's go to the simplest one.
Let me
finish this point.
Yeah,
go ahead.
The higher you go on a globe model, the more curvature you should see, and that horizon shouldn't just go and be able to be seen from further and further away, like you admit is possible to see. That horizon should actually start to curve and should fall below the line of sight, and that's never been shown.
No, it should only. The problem is that the width shouldn't show a curve until you're very high, but you're always going to see the curve in the depth, because the depth is much further than the width. As you go up, the width that you can see is very limited, but the distance becomes further.
You can see 306-degree width the whole time. You can see all the way around you, and as you go, you can see farther. Out here in Wisconsin, there's a spot. The higher you go, the further you can see. You can see for miles and miles and miles. That's actually a flat Earth proof. That's one of those things that proves the Earth is flat, because you can see farther no matter how high you go. On a globe, if you go higher up, yeah, you could still see farther, but you would start to see a curve. You would start to see that horizon.
Which I would say the reason why we can't say that you can't see the curve is because you don't believe the ones that are far enough away. So we have it, but the problem is I can't use that result because you don't believe it once it gets high enough, right? So if you watch the spacecraft, any spacecraft from the 77 or 81 space programs all over the world, if you watch them take off and look back on their camera that's looking back at Earth, there's always a curve at some point, right? So, but those things you don't believe.
Anything, you're absolutely right. I don't believe it, and the reason I don't believe it is because I've seen pictures that are formal NASA photos at 100,000 feet that show the curvature, and then we see Elon Musk with his Tesla floating around in outer space, and he says it's higher than that, and the curvature is like, well, as opposed to the NASA one, and they contradict, and then you see that it's all admittedly CGI, or you see like the Red Bull guy that jumped from outer down, and you look, and when he's outside of it, you can see, oh, it looks like there's a curvature, but when you look from inside of his craft out at the horizon, and there's not a fisheye lens, it's a perfectly flat horizon right at his eye level. So you see these contradictions, and this is the part of the argument where you begin to rabbit trail out into, and the only evidence that you have is, well, NASA said that they went way up here, and look at all this and all this sunset stuff.
But let me also add the two things.
Photoshopped, and so if they admit that they photoshopped their pictures from outer space, how can we trust any of it? And so in a court of law, NASA and their evidence is out, and it doesn't.
Okay. Let me make a point real quick. The two things you say are making it look like the sunset is atmospheric lensing rather than just how it actually looks. And as you go up, the reason why it looks like you can see further is because the atmosphere is changing. So it's two things that are counter what the obvious visible result.
If you bring sunset into it, I would say if you are at ground level, saw the sunset, and then went up in a hot air balloon really high, a high altitude air balloon, the sun would then come back into view, and with also, I propose, decrease in visual size.
Well, of course you would see it if you went up, because we believe that it's the tilting of the Earth away from it.
In the globe model, it wouldn't decrease in its visual size.
But it doesn't. I mean, if you track the sun all the way through the sky, it stays the same exact size. But what about the clouds? The clouds, when the sun sets, the clouds light up on the bottom, but not the top.
That's easily proven to be possible on a flat Earth model as well. There's people who do these examples, and you go far enough away, and the light is able to bend and reflect off of those air molecules in the atmosphere and bounce up off of the air and light up the. I would ask, how is it possible? I mean,
but what's obscuring the top side? But what's obscuring the top side of the cloud?
What do you mean? What's obscuring the top side?
You're saying that the top side of the cloud. Well, you're talking about the underside is a reflection, but the top side's dark. Have you ever seen it where the top sides of the clouds are dark?
Yeah, and the bottom is lit. Yeah.
How does that happen?
It's a matter of perspective and atmospheric lensing.
No, the sun could never come that low. The sun is above the clouds.
It's about how far away the sun is. Okay?
It's always above the clouds, though.
I'd like to answer your question. I really would. Okay.
Is it above the clouds all
No,
the time? No. Okay.
it is always above the sun. The sun is always above the clouds. Yes. The light is not above the clouds.
Oh, the shade lamp thing.
Hold on. No, not about that either. Okay, look. If I'm standing here and the clouds are here, and I'm looking at the clouds at this angle in order to see the clouds, and then the sun is up here and moving really, really far away, at what point do I have the sun at a smaller angle than the clouds?
Yeah, but sometimes the clouds are directly above you.
Is really, really far away, and it's at a smaller angle than
Do
the
it
clouds.
up, straight up.
I mean, no. The sun, I'm talking about during a sunset.
Right, the cloud is straight up.
Well, then that's even easier to prove that the bottom side is lit, because you're right underneath it, and the sun is way over here, and the clouds are right here, so the sunlight's going this way, and it hits this part of the cloud. I mean, it's
Why doesn't it hit the top of the cloud?
because the sunlight's coming in at too shallow of an angle because it's too far away. It's basic geometry.
Well, you gotta give me some help here. If the sun's here, the cloud's here, and the top side of the cloud's dark.
It's too far. You just missed what I said, where my fingers are. The sun's here, the clouds are here, and the sun is higher than the clouds, but it's way down. So if I'm at the bottom corner of my screen, right down here, and the clouds are here, and the sun is way far that way, the sunlight's coming in like this, below the clouds, because it's so far away that the angle you have to look at in order to see the sun is lower. Not to mention, there's an atmosphere in between here of water that is causing that light to be bent downward towards your sight. And so it's very easy to understand how clouds that are closer to you than the sun, which is very, very far away from you, the sunlight comes in at a shallower angle than the clouds are to your perspective. And
So would you admit?
Trying to answer it the way that you can understand it, but
So would you admit that all of your proofs that we've talked about, as far as the sun setting and the seeing further over the horizon, geometrically makes sense on heliocentric model, but only makes sense in your model because the atmosphere is playing tricks on your eyes?
No, I would say that it does not make sense at all on a globe model, and it makes sense on a flat Earth model because of two things. Perspective, which is what we learn in art class about it goes down and away, and there's angles of viewing, and where you are based on what you're looking at and how far away it is, you're driving in a car and this is going by really fast, this is going by really slow, and then this back here looks like it's not moving, and you apply that to this direction, and you can see that there's all these angles and everything, and then there's an atmosphere filled with water in between you and what you're looking at that is so far away that it affects the way it appears to your eye.
Yeah, but the way it appears and reality could be the same.
I've already conceded that some of these arguments work the same both ways on both models.
Well, if you add these atmospheric lensing, because they don't work if it's just visibility. If everything was perfectly visible, your model does not work. Only with this added element of atmosphere, fog, does your model work. And we don't understand exactly how the fog interplays with the sun.
And atmospheric lensing is something that came from globe theorists that they...
And we can predict it. We can predict the lensing.
That is considered to be a real atmospheric phenomena.
Okay. All right, agree to disagree. I really pushed you hard, so I didn't...
I mean, so yes, atmospheric lensing does affect these things, and no, I don't think that it would work the same on a globe. But
you can understand why I would believe in a globe if all my observations geometrically worked globe. But I had to add all these atmospheric adjustments that don't make sense. The atmosphere perfectly keeping the sun the same size as it moves away,
Yeah.
What, right? That, like, why would I believe that? Then why don't I just believe that the sun is
But you believe that the moon is perfectly the same size in the sky as the sun, but they're really far coincidentally away, and you believe that the moon just so happens to be tilted at 66.6 degrees, and the curvature of the Earth just so happens to be 0.666 feet per mile. And so if we're going to get into coincidences, but you just said that you want to do your calculations about globe model without considering atmospheric lensing, but globe theorists see globe model or atmospheric lensing as a necessary component and a factual component in our atmosphere. So
no, they use it as an excuse for why their model doesn't work as well as globe model. That's all.
Atmospheric lensing is a globe proponent.
Right, but you should be able to tell me when and predict it. Because in globe model, we actually use atmospheric lensing to predict how high the Lake Michigan is going to obscure the Sears Tower.
Sometimes you can predict it, and sometimes it changes because you can't always predict a variable. If you're, like I said before, if you're on the top of Mount Everest and you watch a sunset, you won't notice the atmospheric lensing, and the sun will appear to go further away and get smaller from you. You don't see the same exact effect.
They need to have a filter on their camera, though, because I don't believe that at all.
Well, so now you're using the camera filter argument, which I would also use. The globe models use camera filter in order to create arbitrary fake curvature.
No, wait, but we know that the filter lets you see the actual size of the sun, right?
You lost what I'm trying to tell you here.
What? But
track of my
no, you're saying that the sun, if you don't use a filter, the shine is the actual size of the sun.
Oh, I never said that.
Well, I thought you were implying that. Sorry.
No,
because I feel like a sun filter is necessary if you're on Mount Everest and it goes overhead. You need a sun filter because it's very bright overhead, right?
It doesn't. Not just Mount Everest. Go to dry deserts and you'll see sunsets that go whew, like that.
Yeah, but not with a sun filter, because you have to see the actual outline of the sun.
With all I mean, I would hear it. So I appreciate that there. You know, this is I do like to sometimes agree to disagree so that we don't get stuck on just one topic here.
Yeah.
Because the atmospheric lensing aspect of this, it is a very thing, and we don't have all these things. And this is, I mean, we keep coming back to this because one of the things is the biggest things I see as a flat earther is people saying, well, how does the sun set if the Earth is flat? It would be daytime all the time if it worked with, and you know, no, that's not according to the flat Earth model as it exists.
But I would agree that it wouldn't set, because I believe that the lowest it could get in the atmosphere, I actually did the calculations of the farthest the sun would ever be compared to how high it is, it should only go to 10 degrees from the horizon.
And I think that the atmospheric lensing can bend the light further than 10 degrees if that's the case. I mean, so all you're going to get to is where, and you can rabbit trail on some of these things into really obscure mathematical stuff, right? So I don't like getting into those. I mean, I've dug into that myself, and I've seen it to be reasonably explainable on the flat Earth model, and not really explainable very well on the globe model, because in order to say that it doesn't work on the flat Earth model, you have to concede that there's atmospheric lensing, which would make it different on the globe model as well than what we perceive, and so you can't have your cake and eat it too.
But flat earthers make the excuse that we see too much of the Sears Tower from across the Lake Michigan, but we're not allowed to use atmospheric lensing in that case.
No, I use atmospheric lensing in that case because when you see it, the bottom of it disappears a little bit because of the humidity, and it appears to be zoomed in on it compared to other things like boats that appear in the horizon in front of it. So we can dig really deep into the atmospheric lensing topic, right? And I think that's great for people to see and understand that the word atmospheric lensing exists. And I think that there are greater minds than mine out there who can explain it in a better way as to how atmospheric lensing should work in both models. And I think that in the flat Earth model, it is one of the keys in order to explain things like star trails in the southern hemisphere, sun sets. But then what happens is you get into these arguments and you miss by trying to say, well, this is that, or this is that. You miss out on the greater view that gets into all these other things like airplanes that should have to dip their nose down to account for curvature, which would create a centrifugal force upward and then the gyroscopes in the airplane that are non-mechanical, that don't turn backwards as they fly around the curve, and the flight paths and things. And then I hear, oh, well, what about the South Pole flight paths and all that? And I look at it, and all they do is dirt Antarctica. And then you go into, you can see things from really far away again. And then you get into the North Star from below the equator. And then you get into Antarctica. And then you start talking about NASA. And every single one of these aspects are rabbit trails. But why do all these rabbit trails exist? And how come every single one of these rabbit trails is so deep if there's nothing there? And if there's if somebody like me who is willing to and has gone down as far to each of these rabbit trails as I possibly can, why am I so convinced and not convinced by some of I've talked to college professors and all these people, and I've never had one person convince me. No matter
well, it's complicated. And we agree on that. It's extremely complicated. Geodesy is not a simple subject. I mean, it took a long time. People were, taking boats across the entire world to make measurements to try and figure out the exact shape of the spheroid that we're on. But, they spent a whole decade going to places in faraway places to get the right measurement.
There were some people who went in ships, and then they went around and took boats around Antarctica, and they measured how many knots and miles they went, and it was like way more miles than even the equator is supposed to be. So
I don't know about that.
At the bottom of the eyeball, and the Earth we live on is just the iris up here in the top, that kind of thing. Or are we, or is it a cone shape? Because that circumference of that Antarctica is so much bigger than the equator, according to these, or are they they're just lying about their measurements and how long it took them to circumnavigate?
Well, we can't talk about that. You won't take NASA. I won't take this random navigator. So
sure,
we gotta let it go.
Great, that's great. So now we're getting somewhere, because then we can talk about what are the things that we can actually verify for ourselves that we can see. And without a NASA budget in my back pocket, which I would use to go buy myself a homestead and make sure my kids are set up for life instead of buy power and all these things.
For me, I'm going to buy a P1000 so that I can. There's lighthouses out in the Chesapeake Bay, and I'm going to zoom in on every single lighthouse. It's going to be real fun.
Yeah, just don't do it when there's a storm or a foggy day, because you can't see through fog, and that's not atmospheric lensing. That's just fog.
Right.
So there's certain things, and then you get to, why is there an Antarctic Treaty going on? Why are there these things? So there's all these aspects to it, and what my biggest thing about it is most people who are flat Earth proponents even don't understand what the most explainable model is, with the North Pole in the middle, and the sun and moon moving around this way, and Antarctica's the edge, and it goes out for however long, and then there's a dome made of sky ice that's probably solid oxygen or something weird like that, and it goes all the way up over the top, and the stars, sun, and moon are on the side of that, and there's air inside of here, there's water above and outside of it, there's water below, according to what the Bible would say, I think, and there's some really weird things that are hard to explain on a globe model. Like I said, a few of them already, and it's difficult to find that model because some people will say, well, Flat Earth, like for example, the Flat Earth Society, I believe is a fake shill organization trying to bring fake Flat Earth evidence where, gravity is because the Flat Earth is accelerating upward, and that is, and it's this ridiculous explanation. Whereas in the real flat Earth model, gravity is a non-existent thing, and the downward force is explained by electromagnetism and density.
Yeah, but neither one of those two are forces.
Electromagnetism is the force that holds all molecules together by light, and then density is what determines what's lighter and heavier than other objects. And so then the only explanation you have, or the only question you have left, other than what's holding everything together and what's making things more dense than others, is what's deciding which way is up and which way is down.
No, density is actually how they measure how much matter is in a particular space.
Right. Yeah. And so something that's more dense will go down.
So wouldn't the moon and the sun just come down, because they must be a decent size?
Well, not necessarily, because density is not the only force. So you can take something that's very dense, and if it is buoyant in water, like a boat, that buoyancy force is also there.
Yeah, but what's making them float? If there's no gravity and there's no water, there's obviously not water holding the sun and the moon up. So
no, it's probably some kind of, I don't have the explanation. I think it's some kind of electro-atmospheric phenomenon. We see things going where you can take things that are, hyper-cooled, and you can make them float, or like lock them into place over magnets and things. And I believe we live in a magnetic universe, and I think, universe, my universe being an enclosed flat Earth system, and that north center being, we see a magnet even from wherever we're at, points north towards the middle of that flat Earth model. And so there's obviously some kind of magnetic phenomenon going on. And I happen to believe that, there is an explanation. Earlier on in this conversation, I did concede I have no idea how the sun and moon actually work. I don't necessarily need to explain. I don't feel like I have the burden of proof on me as to explaining how every aspect of it works, because I don't understand how all of it works. I don't understand how I'm breathing in and out without thinking about it, but I do know that I'm a human being, right? So I do know and understand and believe that the Earth is flat. I don't necessarily understand how every element within this realm and world that we live in works.
At least you don't believe we're in the Matrix, so that's one thing.
Right. So I do believe there's a scientific explanation for it. As I said, I'm a biblical cosmologist. I think the Bible describes it as a circle. I think it says the sun. And you, my friend, are a Bible believer as well. So I hesitate normally to argue flat Earth from a biblical perspective, but there are a few things I'll bring up really rapid. The Bible does describe the Earth as clay beneath a wax seal. It also describes the sun as having a circuit. It says that the Earth is a circle, not a sphere, and there are two separate words in Hebrew for that. It also says that the sun stopped in the sky for, I think it was King David during a battle, or Joshua, one of the two. I'm mistaken, I think there. But if the sun were to stop, outside of a miraculous thing, and if the Earth is spinning, everyone would go, whoa, right? And so centrifugal force also applies, where if the Earth is spinning at 66, whatever, 66.6 or something, I don't know.
Yeah, but if you think about it, right, the Earth is absolutely massive, and it spins round once a day. Right, so I want you to go. Do you know what a merry-go-round is, or a roundabout? We call them a roundabout in the UK. You might call them a merry-go-round. But you get your friend, or you sit on that merry-go-round, and then get your friend to push you round in a 24-hour period. Do you think that's going to be fast?
No.
No, exactly. Flat Earthers are using the wrong measurements for this.
I agree. That was a wrong argument, and I appreciate you for bringing and pointing that one out, okay? Now, on the alternative, airplanes can go how many times the speed of sound?
I don't know about the jets and stuff like that, but your average travel plane will go 440 to 580 miles per hour. And according to flat earthers, that the Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. So if you think about it, a plane goes half that. So the Earth isn't actually going that fast. So we're not going to go flying off into the dome or into space.
Earthers don't think the Earth is spinning at all. According to the flat Earth model, the Earth is stationary and immovable, like the Bible says. It does not move; it shall not be moved.
No, you said the globe spins round, and we should be like centripetal force spinning off the thing.
Right. So this gets into what I was saying, where we're arguing the rules of a video game. So let's just pretend for a second that we're, and I like this argument because let's say it's all just perception.
Yeah.
And once you look at a particle, then it changes and all this kind of fancy science stuff. And when you look at it, it's a globe. And when I look at it, it's flat, right? Come on, that's nonsense, right? But if we imagine that, then me arguing the rules and trying to say that my rules apply to your model and your rules apply to my model goes back to saying, well, it couldn't possibly be a flat disk because all the other planets are a ball. Well, it's a nonsensical argument because that's not how it applies. So in a flat Earth model, if the Earth is flat, then an airplane can go as fast as it wants, as straight as it wants, and never will have to dip its nose down to account for a curvature. But on a globe model, so you have to argue the way it applies in each model. I can't apply flat Earth theory model aspects. So, some of them can, still can add cheese on top of a hamburger, right? But when you take a plane going that fast and you apply it to a globe, if there's a curvature, then that plane would have to dip its nose downwards to account for curvature, otherwise it would fly off into outer space.
Well, like a centimeter every 70 miles? Do you think that's even noticeable?
How fast is it going? The fastest planes, and there's no measure. I mean, an airplane can go up and curve and create a zero-G effect, and it's not even going a fraction of the speed of these Mach 6 airplanes. And not only that, they go straight, and even if it's a fraction of an inch, that gyroscope would start to slowly tick backwards as it curves around that.
But the gyroscopes always prove globe Earth. The flat earthers bought a gyroscope and it proved flat.
Gyroscopes don't turn with the rotation, the supposed rotation. They stay straight.
These electrical ones. Well, I'd like to know more about that because I'm not familiar.
Electrical ones that are only owned by people who can develop the $40,000 one. And
well,
then
the mechanical ones are more trustworthy. We know that.
And they stay straight.
And I'd love to get a pilot on the show just to come and sort of confirm some of this information, because unfortunately I'm not a pilot. Pretty sure Jonathan's not a pilot, and neither are you. So we can't really.
My dad's a pilot.
Oh, is he? Oh, well. Yeah. If you're both willing to come on again, and we'll do another show. Hopefully,
He's the NASA guy. My dad would be a really good person to talk to about this. Although he'd be a little bit, maybe he would scoff a little more than me. Because he worked for NASA and he's a pilot, so
absolutely. And I personally believe that these people deserve respect. You know what I mean? They do so much, but yet then you get flat earthers that just piss on everything they've done, and they want globers to just forget about it all.
Well, it's a small thing to them too. It's not they're not familiar with it. If you dig in and you actually, if you actually wanted to talk to a NASA employee, there's been a lot of them. So, but that's not necessary. You don't have to do that. There's a lot of other ways to.
NASA employees, there's at least one that I've seen who came out and talked about how this was layered, and they didn't really know what was going on in all these different departments, and so there's been NASA documents that admit that they're talking about over a flat stationary Earth in the document, and so. Some of these things, you start, like I said, you dig down the rabbit trail and the rabbit hole, and you're talking about an entire society of people who, most people don't have the big picture. Most people just have that cubicle that they're in, that they've learned from their childhood, of this is how it has to be, this is the only way it can be. And so, when they're
but they're making very difficult mathematical calculations
in a computer in front of them. And
building a huge ship based on those calculations.
They launch that ship off into the ocean, and it never goes straight up, and it always goes in a curve and comes back down, and it's always off into that ocean area, and you can't see it. So, you see what I'm saying? So there's always
No. Have you seen the ISS? Do you track the ISS?
And you go, here's another one. Then you see people with astronomy photography of the ISS, and it looks like it's just an airplane done up to look like the ISS if you look through a telescope. So see, there's always this deniability aspect. There's always not coming from, and it's like the proof that NASA wants to always throw this. Here's your proof. Here's your proof. Here's an absolute perfect picture of Earth from outer space, and then it's CGI.
Right? Can you just answer one thing? What does NASA benefit from trying to convince people they live on a globe Earth when they actually live on a flat Earth? Money. Well, what difference does it make? They would still make money if we lived on a globe Earth. If they did it the other way round.
And there was this groundbreaking proof that everybody needs to know that suddenly it's flat and it has been, here's what it is, and this became a mainstream thing. I would say NASA's lying to us. They have been. Shut them down. Give that.
Yeah, but why are they lying to them? Why are they lying to us? What is the exact point of it all?
That's a great question, and I've heard that question asked multiple times, and I think it's a multifaceted answer. First of all, like I said, follow the money. If all you have to do is produce a Hollywood film in order to get, billions and billions of taxpayer dollars funded, who knows where that money would really be going if that's the case. Well, secondly, NASA's not the only one doing it. There's other organizations in other governments that use the same satanic symbolism and the thing in their logos, and they're all these modern nations. They all happen to be the same thing.
But you're not answering the question. How exactly are they making money off convincing people they live on a globe? What is the point, whether we live on a flat Earth or a globe? What is?
Because if you get billions of dollars to supposedly send a rocket into space, and all you do is send up a toy rocket that costs you $100.
Yeah, but I thought the government were in on it as well, so it's them that's handing over the money for nothing. If they know that we're on a flat Earth.
So you get $1 billion in, and all I have to do is keep you convinced the Earth is a globe and shoot up a $100,000 rocket into the sky, or however much, my $1 million rocket, whatever. And then I get to keep the rest as long as I convince you it's the globe. Well, that's one aspect. The other aspect...
Yeah, but really, all they have to do is convince the government, not the people. It's got nothing to do with the people if they're getting money off the government. But flat earthers say the government have something to do with it. It's all part of their hoax as well.
Sure. And I think the government would have something to do with it if that's the case. And I think that it's a giant... I would say that there's the same reason why people are trying to say and push evolution propaganda into schools. I think there's a huge effort to hide the Bible and say that, because think about this, if the earth is flat and it's a dome and we're stuck in here, someone or something or some group of people or something put us here and made it and put us inside of this dome, and we're stuck. I mean, go watch the Truman Show, if you're, but we're this speck of nothing in the middle of outer space just spinning around all this endless, dust of nothing, then we're meaningless, we're so small, there is no need for a God in society, and so you can mold and twist morality into whatever you want it to be, and you can change the environment. If you plug somebody into a matrix, the matrix doesn't have to be a computer program, it can be a way of thinking. Because if I'm an atheist and I have the globe and all these explanations as to why I exist as a stardust particle in the middle of a nothing, and it's just a big bang multi thing.
Let me interrupt you real quick.
And I think they're scared not just of the Bible, but of religion in general, because all these religions thought it was flat, except for
lots of NASA scientists are Christians. My dad was a Christian. My pastor was a Christian. But listen, the NASA is not the first. It's not the first organization from the American government that was interested in globe Earth. The first actual federal agency was called the U.S. National Survey, and it was to map according to geodesy. They were mapping the entire country and creating a survey, and all the math was based on on a heliocentric model of a spherical Earth. So the conspiracy would have to go back another 150 years.
Yeah. I'm talking 500 years, because even prior to the U.S. existing, the first globe model proponents were Catholic Jesuits. So
no, that's not true. The Greeks weren't Jesuits.
The Greeks had all kinds of different weird theories, and not all.
Yeah, but they were the first ones to discover the heliocentric model.
Well, right? They were discovered, but at the same time, the Greeks were the same ones. The Greeks and the Romans and all of that culture were the same ones that brought together that Roman Catholicism religion that brought it all together, and it mirrors that same thing. Where did the Jesuits get it from? And the Greeks were a very paganistic society that wanted to introduce these.
I don't have a problem with your skepticism of big institutions. I think that it's just misplaced. Your skepticism is misplaced in this one category. That's all. Because I agree that there's a lot of institutional abuses. We know that, over the last 2,000 years in Christianity, the Catholic Church has been pretty awful at a lot of times, and so I understand being skeptical of them. But the thing is, this point is a shared understanding of most of humanity for the last 3,000 years.
I would disagree entirely. I don't think it's 3,000 years at all. I think it's only about the last 500 years. And when you look at just about any ancient culture, whether it's Muslims or Hindu or Greek, and you look at their models of the world we live on, it goes all the way back to people thinking that it's a flat Earth on the back of a turtle, or the Egyptians, they have this goddess that's the sky over the flat Earth model below it. There's and there's all these different religions out there. And even the ancient Hebrews have their model of a flat Earth on 4 pillars, with where the Bible talks about the heavens as a tent to dwell in, and the earth being a foundation below it that is not moved. And so I would totally disagree that, and I would even go as far as to say that many of the early Bible believers, which is less than 2,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago, were probably flat Earth proponents, because we don't see globe theory being at all prevalent in any culture anywhere on the Earth until about 500 years ago in the Jesuit reign and that of the Roman Catholic era. So with all of these other cultures that you go to, you look at their models of the flat Earth, and this is an easy Google search. You can
so
see
you think that Christopher Columbus was like a
flat Earth, flat Earth, flat Earth, flat Earth, flat Earth, flat Earth, and then you have NASA as a globe. And all.
But Christopher Columbus was believing a popular opinion at the time. I mean, 1492 is a long time ago, and he was so convinced that he sailed the ocean.
Sure.
Like he put all his eggs in the in the heliocentric model before this modern age.
And which direction did he sail, east or west?
Which way? He went west.
West. So west on a globe and west on a flat Earth model would have taken him to the same exact spot. So you just proved nothing. You see what I'm saying?
Well, I proved that. No, I'm not talking about the experiment. I'm talking about his mentality and how popular it was in 1492.
A mentality doesn't mean you can't build a car. I don't have to be a flat earther to build a car. I don't have to be a flat earther to fly a plane over some coordinates, especially if those coordinates are based on the location of the stars in the sky. They're gonna pull you to wherever you need to go. And if you're just making a giant right-hand turn or a giant left turn, like NASCAR.
Well, I'm just saying he took a very big risk based on his idea that the Earth was a globe. And,
sure, he didn't end up exactly where he thought, did he?
No, he didn't. That's true, because there was a whole other continent in a way.
Right. So it just proves my point that you don't actually, your theory doesn't have to be correct for you to actually end up having a successful endeavor in something, especially when it's a theory that is outside of something that's really tangible for any of us to really get our hands around. We only have one guy that's 7 stars in his hand. And
I just wanted to make the point that somebody in 1492 was so convinced of globe that he put his life at stake. Sure. He put everything that he was worth into something that could only work in his mind in a globe model. So that's more than 500 years.
And it doesn't mean it had to be a globe in order for it to still work. That's my point.
But I know. I'm talking about his mentality. You're talking about like it's a modern conspiracy, but people that are convinced for themselves will put their life at stake, but they won't put their life at stake for something that is not they're not convinced by.
That's true, and I agree with that. But just because you believe something and you put your life at stake for it doesn't mean that it's factual. And especially if the result is the same regardless of what you believe.
Yeah.
So,
But also the geodesy survey in the United States is a very interesting thing to research as well, because it goes way before NASA, and they had much more rudimentary instruments to learn the shape of the Earth. And there was a lot of arguments about the exact shape of the Earth during that time, especially. So it's a very interesting rabbit trail to go down. That's a little bit different because it's older, but it also follows the development of how our confidence got so high. You know what I'm saying? Because the confidence was low earlier on. Obviously, there was a different model.
I would say that confidence is based on consensus, and consensus is not always based on fact.
Yeah, I agree with that to some degree too. But anyways.
And there's quite a bit going on there, and I appreciate all these things. And really, I hope that what we can see after what we've talked about is that these rabbit trails go really far before you can get to something that proves it one way or another. And there are a lot of different aspects of this that go in all these different directions. And when you go down them, you have to understand that many of these concepts and these theories or these ideas, just like Columbus going west, will work the same in both models. And so my goal would be to find those issues that only work on one model or the other. And,
right. And I would say, I would want you to understand that a lot of people have gone down these rabbit trails, and it's better to understand them than to do it yourself and reinvent the wheel. Right? Because you can actually get a little further along in your understanding when you understood why people thought what they thought. You know what I'm saying? I feel like there's a lot of overlooking why they came to the conclusion that the Earth was a globe hundreds of years ago. You know, when it became a consensus. So I think that it's important to understand why and to learn more about that as well.
Sure, and I would also counter that with saying, the understanding why certain people came to that conclusion does not mean that they convinced everybody of that. And
well, there's always new people getting born too. So there's always people that are learning new things. I cringe at the idea of having to reinvent the wheel and go back 5,000 years for things that, millions of people have put really hard time, sweat, and tears into understanding.
Inventing a new wheel that is ball-shaped instead of flat, right? So, you see what I'm saying? There's quite a bit, and so there's all this stuff. I mean, it goes back and forth, and it's very easy to go back and forth, but if you don't understand the real reasons for that flat Earth model that people go to and how they apply, because I think, for example, I spent a really long time trying to explain to you how atmospheric lensing works in the flat Earth model, and I would ask that people who are globe proponents at least try to understand how flat Earth...
I probably need help with that, because I feel like my understanding is it makes it work with flat Earth. That's how it works. Whatever flat Earth needs, that's what atmospheric lensing does.
Well, gravity does the same thing for globers. So, and it's not actually, because atmospheric lensing is just one of the aspects. You also need several other things: perspective, density, buoyancy, all these things that are really scientific elements that we didn't make up ourselves. These are natural physical attributes of the world we live in that we took from people who are scientists. And I think that, science is one of those things where, people study really hard in their field. And so, and they're really good at dinosaur bones or whatever, and let's not get into that one, right? But they're really good at all these things, and they just kind of trust what everyone else says, and they take the group consensus. But consensus does not always mean that that is fact. It's still a theory, and I say globe is still a theory, and I will concede that flat Earth model is still also a theory. I just think that there are more proofs for the flat Earth model that I have seen as opposed to globe explanations, and I haven't seen any real proof for a globe model that can't be easily explained away by either big money, fisheye lenses, indoctrination, or just flat out lies that people, it takes too hard to find them. And real people don't have the time in their day of life that we've been even able to, happily spend here today in order to try and touch the surface, which is where I hope we got close to today, is touching the surface of the debate. People can't even find the time to figure out how to understand the debate, let alone engage in it.
All right, well, I don't want to go too long. I'm starting to burn out here. So,
You're not the only one. It's 12 o'clock in the morning here, 12 o'clock p.m. So I'm I'm ready for my bed.
I hope you got some good material.
Oh, absolutely.
Hey, I want to say, Josh, I appreciate you. You're one of the most solid flat earthers that I've met, and I'm glad that you were willing to come on here. That's awesome, John. You found a gem.
Brilliant. Yeah, I completely agree with everything that Jonathan's just said. You know, like I said, you've been the most politest flat earther that I've met so far. And I've spoken to a few on Facebook, and you know, I even had a list of what I thought about flat earthers, but you've completely changed my mind about them. You haven't changed my mind about flat earth whatsoever, but you know.
It's really a hard thing to believe. Sometimes I have lost friendships and relationships over it. I've had, you know, people who, you know, as polite and as formal and respectful as I can possibly be about just answering simple questions or presenting my view. I still tend to always feel like I'm being a little rude. And sometimes people take huge offense. I've had family fallouts over it. I've had issues where, you know, I've also made great friends over it. But it's just one of those aspects. It's part of my walk. It's part of my faith. It's part of what I've come to see. It was a huge change in my paradigm shift. I had to get over a huge amount of cognitive dissonance to be able to get to where I am in my my understanding of what I think and why. And John, down at the bottom of my screen, you know, the other Bible believer here, I do encourage you to continue reading the scriptures. I encourage anyone to read the Bible, whether you believe it or not. It's a very interesting, fascinating historical document, and I think there's always a lot of wisdom to learn out of it, and a lot of beauty there. But I do also find that it's very fascinating that everybody take that time to look into all of these aspects. Go look and find a topic. Go do a rabbit trail when you're on your own. Go think about it, and don't ever take someone else's word for it. Don't ever just take a photo or a meme and say, hey, that makes sense to me, so therefore I'm going to build my worldview on that. Not saying anybody of you have ever done that. I mean, I've done that, I know. But, you know, dig into these things. Learn as much as you can. Always keep learning until the day you die, and keep having fun with it. And I appreciate the respect that you guys have shown me as well. And I appreciate it. I'd be glad to come on and answer some more questions. Maybe dig a couple more rabbit trails or ignore them or whatever. Answer those questions. And maybe somebody will convince somebody at some point. Who knows?
Well, anything can happen, I suppose. But I don't know. I prefer to follow the evidence and the people that have taken the time to do the studies and spent their life doing it. To me, flat earthers just seem to have YouTube channels. But in all fairness, I haven't really looked into it, because every time I talk to a flat earther, I was called a sheep, brainwashed, a globetard, which is another one of their favourite words. So, you know.
So, you know, yeah, I think it goes a little bit both ways with some of that, and I think that's just immaturity, and I don't think that's going to get anybody anywhere. And, you know, on behalf of flat earthers, shut up about that, dude. You guys can't be, you know, if you want to have any kind of respectful conversation, the moment you know, degrade yourself into insults is when you automatically lost the debate and you lost the opportunity to even help somebody see what you believe and why, let alone convince them. And so I appreciate the respect and the kindness here, and the heated back and forth. That's always fun for me too. And I appreciate the insight and research you guys have done, and always just look at all of it in one big piece. And it's hard to zoom in and then zoom out and zoom in and then zoom out, especially when, you know, we got a fisheye lens on. So,
well, we've been talking about 2 hours 10 minutes now, so I'm pretty sure we could probably make a few more podcasts out of what we're talking about. Just carry it on into a series.
Don't be taking me out of context.
He's gonna be watching your editing. All right, guys, I gotta roll.
Right, brilliant.
All
Thank you very much,
Yeah,
Jonathan. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and it's
Yeah.
also been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much. I'm off to bed now. It's 12 o'clock at night.
Good night, John. Good
Cheers,
night, Josh.
mate. Thanks a lot.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye now.